Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how you can invent new things using knowledge graphs and AI. As an example, we will be using a visualization of search results from Google Patterns for a certain query. In this case it's HRV, heart rate variability, and as you can see, a knowledge graph helps me identify the gap in the current discourse, so what the patterns are talking about but what they're not yet connecting, and then it shows me this gap. And then I can use this gap to generate new ideas. So for example, I can use the built-in AI into Nodus, the tool that visualizes the knowledge graphs from Google Patterns. And then it feeds this gap into the AI to generate an interesting research question that can help me develop a research idea, or it can even develop a product idea if I click here on AI idea based on this gap. So the whole workflow is very simple. You visualize the search results for a certain search query from Google Patterns. You can also use Google Scholar. Then you identify the gap like you can now see on this page, and then this will help you connect ideas from those patterns in a way that those patterns haven't yet connected them. So that's like a really good approach for finding new ideas and generating your own. So if you're interested to learn how it works, keep watching and I will demonstrate step by step. We'll be using a tool that I developed that's called Nodus that visualizes any text as a knowledge graph where the words or the entities, whatever you choose, are the nodes and the co-occurrences are the connections, and then it applies network science to show you the structure of this discourse, the structure of this knowledge graph, and to identify the concepts or entities that have a higher importance or higher influence based on between centrality, and also show you what are the clusters of ideas that exist inside any discourse. So when you apply this to any text, a research document, Google search results or Google pattern search results in this case, you can get a really nice topical representation of the main ideas in that discourse. And then the gap identification is based on us knowing that structure and finding which gaps are not yet connected, and then thinking or generating ideas that would bridge this gap in new, interesting way. So how do we do that? Let me show it to you step by step. So first we go to the apps section of Nodus, and then we go on the brainstorm section, and then we type in a search query that we would like to use. In this case, I'm going to use HRV for heart rate variability. It's a topic I'm interested in, and I'm going to choose the Google Pattern Analysis app here, and then I'm just gonna name it, give it a new name. And as you can see, I can choose to analyze titles and search snippets, also just titles, abstracts, but I like to start with this general overview, just what Google itself thinks is important for this topic. It's quite a good filter actually. And then in the advanced settings, I can also choose to extract entities, but I actually like to use words because then when I use the AI on top of it, I just tend to get better results because I think AI gets more context this way. So the first thing that happens is that you have this top 40 patterns that you chose to extract or visualized as a graph, where the words are the nodes and the co-occurrences are the connections between them. The more influential are the words in this context, and influence doesn't mean frequency here. Influence means that it connects different topics together, just like it works in social networks. So the more influential they are, the bigger they will be on the graph, and if they belong to the same topical cluster, they will have the same color and usually tend to be closer to each other. So this gives me a good representation of the main patterns for HRV in Google search results. So one thing that I like to do first is to remove the words that I don't think are necessary to this discourse. So for example here, HRV stands for heart rate variability, so I can select that, remove this. Then also what I can do is to delete maybe system and method, because these are words that are used in patterns quite a lot. Also claim, I can get rid of that. And then what else I can delete? Also maybe comprise, because this is not important. But as you can see already, just by slicing off this top layer of the most obvious concepts, I'm already learning what this discourse is about, right? Like what are the terms they use. Data is also quite generic, I don't need that, but now by removing that, I understand that they're talking about methods and claims and data, and also signal processing, also time. If I click on time, I can actually see in which context it's used. So they're talking about real-time analysis, but also how it changes over time. But that's quite obvious because it's a dynamic, so we will be talking about time. And I think here I can stop after I removed quite a few nodes, and usually the sign for me that I can stop slicing off the top layer from the graph is when the graph becomes heterogeneous, when I can see that it has different islands of activity, those different clusters which are separated from another. And by the way, you have really good metrics in Nodus of that, this topical diversity measure that shows that now it's optimal. So once you cut off these words, it's going to move to the optimal stage, and that means that the modularity reached a high enough level that now you can extract meaningful insights based on this topical structure of the graph. So here I can stop and I can start looking. And for example, I can see that a lot of those patterns are talking about ECG parameters and analyzing them. User sensors, so something like sensors that are made for users, also determining, and then periods of sleep, quality of sleep, and then we also have monitoring devices here and also pulse analysis. So you see we have all these different concepts, and here we have the clusters actually, and we can also toggle this button here to show their names directly on the graph. So we can see that some of them are talking about sleep metrics here, ECG analysis, wearable monitoring, activity measurements, and more about physical activity and so on. So that gives me a really nice high-level overview of the discourse in those patterns, what they're talking about. I understand that when people talk about HRV in their inventions, they will be talking about sleep, ECG analysis, wearable devices, and activity measurements. That's quite a good overview. Now I can get into more details. So usually what I like to do here is to select a topic that is smaller, but that is interesting to me, like for instance in this case, pulse diagnosis, and then I can click on some of the terms and then see in which context they're used. So when I click on pulse analysis and then I open the statement, I can actually see that the actual patent that is using pulse analysis. And here it's talking about analysis system and a method for pulse analysis in Chinese medicine. And that's great because I'm interested in Chinese medicine, but also in HRV. So that seems like a really interesting patent for me. I can click on that link, open it in a new window, and then analyze it separately within Nodus, which I'm going to show you later, or just read it and learn what it's about. And then another really useful thing that I showed at the very beginning of the video is that you can use this topical structure to identify the gaps in the discourse. So here I go to content gaps, and then I click on highlight and network, and then I can reiterate through the gaps in the discourse, because these are the things that the patents are talking about but are not yet connecting. And some of them might give me some ideas for new inventions or insights. For instance, here it's proposing me to connect a temporal feature, so something about intervals and plurality, generating feature, and then also glucose patterns. So you see it's not so connected, and then I'm going to use the AI now to generate a research question that would connect those two topics together. So for instance, here it's asking me how can we utilize temporal patterns of heart rate variability and continuous blood glucose measurements to enhance personalized mental stress prediction using wearable devices. So it's interesting because it connects mental stress but to HRV and also blood glucose. So that's quite nice. It can give me an idea for new research or maybe device, because it's based already on what people are proposing in those patents, but they're not proposing it in the same context. So I could make a new claim that would combine those together. And this is how patents work, actually, if you know how they work. And then if you click on AI idea, this is AI generating an idea for us. I actually like to use the question because I like to think of an idea myself, but you can also just generate ideas directly. And here it's, for example, proposing me to develop a wearable device that continuously monitors heart rate variability and blood glucose at the same time. And by analyzing it, it also determines my stress levels and predicts glucose fluctuation. So it's kind of interesting because you either have one or the other, and here's proposing us to combine both. I actually don't really know the device that is using those two measurements at the same time. Maybe there's an app that does it, but then it could be an idea for an app. So you see, just in a few seconds, we generated an idea that is not yet present in the patents. And we can, of course, research, and maybe there is one, but then you could do the same thing, visualize the claims, and then find where are the gaps in the claims and make a new claim that would bridge this gap. So that's also quite interesting, I think. And then when I go to the actual patent that I'm interested in, so for instance, here I selected this one, I can actually analyze the content of this patent itself. And so what I do is that I go into apps again, brainstorm, but now instead of the search query, I just add the name of this patent, Google Patent Analysis. I have the name here. And then here I choose to analyze the claims, for example, right? And then I click visualize, and now it's just going to extract the claims from this patent, and then it's going to show me what it's about, and then it gives me a nice overview of the content of the patent. So for instance, here it's talking about Chinese medicine and pulse dynamics and measurement, parameter establishing, signal processing, activity sensitivity. And it's kind of like giving me a visual overview of the main ideas, and then I can start researching this patent in the same way, or adding more patents on this topic into this graph and gradually building something from which I can again extract gaps and generate some new ideas based on those gaps. So I think as an ideation device is really interesting. Also, if you're involved in research or inventions, this is also great because you can kind of study what exists out there and see where are the gaps and maybe think of some ideas that would bridge those gaps. And it's just a lot of fun to explore information this way because you can, for example, see what are the research papers on a certain subject, compare it with the patents, visualize everything, and usually it kind of helps you start thinking in a certain direction. So I find it very interesting for that, and I hope you will enjoy it as well. Please let me know what you think about it, and if you have any comments or questions, please leave them under the video, and also please subscribe to the channel so that this video can get recommended to other people interested in this content. Thank you.